Welcome to the San Jose Hockey Now podcast. This is Sheng Peng. I'm editor-in-chief of San Jose Hockey Now. Also, you can find my work at NBC Sharks. Find my work also on Twitter at Sheng_Peng.
And I'm Keegan McNally. You can find me at halfwall_hockey on Twitter, also at San Jose Hockey Now.
Today, we have a special guest, Sharks great and current assistant GM of the Flyers, Alyn McCauley. Alyn is here to talk about his time with the Sharks. He's one of just 2 Sharks to ever be nominated for a Selke Trophy, and he also was part of the first Sharks Western Conference Final team in 2004. Also, too, Alyn's going to talk a little bit about the Flyers rebuild and Matvei Michkov. We're also bringing you Keegan's insights into the recently played World Junior Summer Showcase, a tournament that had a lot of Sharks prospects, had 7 of them, including Will Smith, Quentin Musty, Philip Bysted. And of course, we have, Erik Karlsson news, which we're going to start off with.
And just a little disclaimer for everybody. We're recording this on Saturday evening, 8:30 Atlantic time, my time, I think 4:30 Pacific time. And that means that by the time that you hear this, if it's Monday or Tuesday or whenever, there might have already been some Karlsson trade news, but we haven't got to it yet.
Which we will get to if and when it happens.
If it does happen, you might get 2 podcasts that week. But for now, this is the pre-Karlsson trade podcast. Yes. So Karlsson news is really kind of like Pittsburgh Penguin news almost. So Penguins have long been considered like the front runner. I say long been, it's only been a month. Long been considered the front runner for Karlsson. And they had recently, as of today, I believe, opened a buyout window where they could buy out one of their players, which doesn't always happen. It requires some special circumstances to have like a 72-hour or 48-hour window of time to buy out a player. And that ends on an
AAV has to be over $4 million.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's not like the general buyout windows that normally happen. So it's a little bit more specific. There's been some speculation that because of this, they could use this buyout window to clear cap space by either buying out Mikael Granlund or Jeff Petry, who have been both mentioned in Karlsson trade rumors as kind of like the salary going back for the player for Karlsson. But Sheng, I wanted to get your thoughts on that bit of news. Basically, are the Penguins in this buyout window? Are they going to think about buying out one of these players?
Well, should ask the Penguins writer that, but
yeah.
But no, podcast over. But from my understanding, have talked with some people, and actually, Elliotte Friedman repeated the same thing, that Kyle Dubas doesn't believe in buyouts. And looking back at it, he never bought anybody out in Toronto. And so you have that already. So you have a GM who is not necessarily has used that mechanism a lot. But though, I want to talk specifically about Mikael Granlund, because he is both the most intriguing buyout and trade candidate for the Penguins. And again, the relevance for Karlsson, like you clear a lot of money. Maybe the Pens can fit Karlsson in if you buy somebody like Granlund out. But anyway, let's talk first about Granlund's buyout and why that is. He's way more attractive as a buyout candidate than Jeff Petry. And right now, Granlund has $5 million AAV. That's his contract for the next 2 years. But if you buy him out, his cap hit would be just $833,000 in the first year, $1.8 million basically the next year, and $1.8 million the last 2 years. So that's a pretty good savings in the first 2 years there, right? Especially the first year of the buyout. You save $4.2 million almost. Anyway, Petry's buy. If you buy Petry out, even though Petry's AAV is higher, $6.25 million, he's got bonuses. And so basically what happens here is that the cap hit on a Petry buyout is $3 million in the first year. So compare that to Granlund, $800,000, $4.5 million in year 2. Compare that to Granlund, $1.8 in the second year. And then $1.25 million in the last 2 years of the buyout. So that's slightly better than Granlund, but there's no real comparison there. Petry's contract is almost buyout proof in a way because there just aren't a lot of savings to it.
And you barely get anything by doing that. You save a little bit of time, but you could also just retain half on Petry and trade him to a team that he wants to go to, and then you'd be basically doing better than you would from a buyout for the next 2 years.
Right. And so in terms of trade then, Granlund. So Granlund doesn't have any trade protections, while Petry has a 15-team trade no trade list, and so that's a huge difference. You can trade Granlund anywhere. Petry, not so much. And according to Rob Rossi of the Athletic, San Jose is on Jeff Petry's 15-team no trade list. Because San Jose is far from his family. I believe Petry lives in Michigan, and I haven't been able to confirm that is indeed the case, that San Jose is on his list, but it wouldn't be surprising, and so it makes Petry, he's both an unattractive trade candidate for San Jose and an unattractive buyout candidate for Pittsburgh. And so anything involving Petry, like you alluded to, Keegan, I assume is going to require a third team. And so anyway, my reaction to all the news this weekend in terms of what are the Pens going to do, and how that can kind of, what that means for Erik Karlsson, to me, all eyes are on Mikael Granlund right now.
Yeah, it seems like Granlund's the more favorable option. And I think the thing to bring up with that is, even though Petry's last 2 years are 1.2 versus Granlund's 1.8, the Penguins seemingly are in this window where they want to compete, while Malkin and Crosby are still Malkin and Crosbying, at least a little bit.
Letanging is still Letanging.
And Letanging is still Letanging. So it doesn't really matter what happens in the last 2 years. It really kind of matters over the next 2 years. I think that's kind of their window of time is that. And if they're going to go for it, which all indications are that Dubas was brought in to try and get this core to win again, that Granlund seems to be the more attractive option rather than Jeff Petry.
But I would say though, if I can step in here, that what makes it interesting though is that if Granlund is both your most attractive buyout and trade candidate, well, you can only do one or the other with him. And where does that leave Petry? And so, we'll see where that all ends up.
Yeah. Is there a world where Karlsson comes and Petry stays? Maybe. You'd have to get really creative with the cap.
Yeah.
I don't know. But it's possible, I guess.
Yeah.
They don't
but
have
then Pittsburgh might have to trade Pettersson, which they don't want to do. So
sure, exactly. Somebody who's more valuable, younger, all that. So,
Mhm.
But the other team that's always brought up, and I think basically every week have mentioned these two teams, is Carolina. And Carolina recently signed Tony DeAngelo after he was bought out by the Flyers. He signed for, I think, 1.675 1 year, $1.675 million. DeAngelo, as most people know, is an offensive right-handed defenseman, and Karlsson is also an offensive right-handed defenseman. So does this kind of take them out of the Karlsson trade talks by signing DeAngelo?
Right, and Brent Burns too is also another offensive right-handed defenseman. So good news for the Sharks, I think, is that I personally wouldn't count Carolina out from a Karlsson trade. And this is just my opinion. But the reason why I call it good news is because you need more teams interested in Karlsson to kind of up trade offers. If it's just Pittsburgh that's very, very interested, then you're not going to get a great offer from them. And so anyway, a lot of people did take the Tony DeAngelo signing as eliminating Carolina from the Karlsson chase. And of course, like you mentioned, having three right-handed power play guys like Burns, Karlsson, and DeAngelo, that honestly seems wacky. Wacky to me too. But if you look at DeAngelo's contract, though, right? It's 1 year for $1.675 million. That number is, well, that's a bottom pairing or even number 7 defenseman number, right? I mean, that's not a number that necessarily earmarks a guy to be in your top 4. And so if he's bad or you need cap space too, you can even bury DeAngelo most of that 1.675 million in the minors, you can bury up to 1.15 million in the AHL. So while I would still kind of maintain what I've heard, what I mentioned in the podcast before, that I think the Canes are still circling around Karlsson mainly for a bargain, and I don't think that they want Karlsson as much as Dubas might. And they definitely don't need Karlsson as much as Pittsburgh does to kind of up their ceiling. Carolina, of course, is a very, very good team already. But however you slice it, though, it's good though if there are more teams interested in Karlsson, and so so that's my takeaway there.
So still in it, maybe, even though they signed DeAngelo, because worst case scenario, you get Karlsson and DeAngelo no longer fits on your team. He wouldn't really count that much against you, or you use him in a sheltered third pairing role where maybe he could still contribute offensively, or on the second power play, however they slice it up, basically. Right. And I think this is a little bit off the script, but there was basically wondering how Carolina can kind of fit these deals in, because they seem to be close to the cap when you first look at it. But your thoughts on that, at least a little bit.
Well, Carolina's done a tremendous job with their cap. If you look at their Puckpedia page, it's I think right now they're pretty much up against the cap, but a couple things that they can do easily to get well under to fit in a Karlsson. They have 3 goalies right now, and one of them, Kochakov, he is waiver exempt, and so you can take his 2 million AAV off of the beginning of the season. They have, I think, 8 defensemen tacked on. So, Coughlin, a guy making close to the minimum, he might be a guy that they try out in waivers. They just send him down. Sure. Obviously, everyone's heard Brett Pesce. His name has been in trade rumors. So Brett Pesce and Brady Shea, they're both UFAs after next season. And they're both guys, though, even though they're both guys that both have a lot of value, basically. And so that's a good problem to have. They're not a Granlund or Petry problem. And the last guy, the other kind of popular kind of candidate contract, salary dump candidate on the Hurricanes is Toivu Teravainen. But even he is a way more attractive buyout and trade option compared to Granlund or Petry, because Teravainen's only got 1 year left on his deal, $5.4 million, and he's only 28 too. So both Granlund and Petry are past 30. And so otherwise, look at their cap sheet. I mean, okay, Kotkaniemi is probably signed for too long. I think we all agree on that. But otherwise, I mean, they have a very good looking sheet. And even I know that they need to extend on Netches, and they just extended on Aho at a pretty reasonable rate, I think, for a guy.
It's a huge get for them, for sure, because there was that whole saga with Aho and the Canadians, basically. Yep. And now he's signed long term after they got it back.
Yeah. But overall, though, I think it's a testament to what they've done there. You look at their cap sheet, it's a contending team that could well win a Stanley Cup exactly as they are right now. And they don't have an awful contract on the books. Even Teravainen, I've talked with people, he had a bad year last year, but he was really good before. And I don't know if that's considered a bad contract. That's kind of just, okay.
A down year.
Yeah. And you hope he bounces back. Otherwise, they don't really have a bad contract on their books. And so that's really, really impressive to build as deep a team as they have, all, pretty well under the cap. And I mean, they were in Tarasenko. I think they had offered him more than $5 million. And so, they still seem to be in on Karlsson too.
Yeah. So I kind of just basically leaves it open that Carolina is still in the running, and more to that, they don't have a bad contract on their books, but how likely are they to take on a bad contract? I think they're going to want a significant amount of retention if they were to take Karlsson, just based off of their previous history and how good they are with their cap.
I would think so. Yeah. So again, I think they're looking for kind of a deal, but they are still interested, and they haven't, if they had signed Tarasenko, maybe that would have taken them out of it in terms of just the fitting in the money, maybe. But DeAngelo, I don't think does it. But in terms of just to kind of close off before we talk all this Karlsson stuff every week, and it's we don't have any any hard news yet. So just curious about sort of, Keegan, your prediction for this weekend, or what's going to happen with the Penguins.
Yeah.
and their buyout situation and how that affects Karlsson. So anyway, I'm gonna start with my prediction, and then I'm
Sure.
curious what you think. So for me, this is a pure guess. So I want to stress this a million times. This is a pure guess. Okay, so I'm not advocating for it. I'm not saying it. I'm just guessing based on just the best guess on what I think
Sure.
will happen. Okay, and we'll see. We might find out by we'll find out actually. We'll find out by Monday if I'm right in terms of a buyout. Right. So anyway, I think that the Pens do buy out Granlund just because it's just way too attractive a savings for them. And also, too, they're kind of tied to cap. They are over the cap right now, but Gensel just went down. So they may start the season with him on LTIR. So they may not need to get rid of Granlund or Petry, but Gensel's going to come back. Gensel's injury isn't the injury that's going to take him out for the year. And so I think that Granlund, again, just too attractive a savings on a buyout, which we talked about. I'm going to
Hmm.
predict. So again, these are just predictions here that Pittsburgh does trade Petry to say a Chicago. And we've
Mm-hmm.
talked before, I either on this podcast or I've written, why Chicago is a good candidate. Chicago has shown willingness to take on bad contracts this summer. Josh Bailey. If you look at Chicago needs defensemen right now, and also too, Chicago is obviously close to Michigan, and so I think that could happen. Pittsburgh will have to attach a first. At least that's my guess that they'll have to attach at least a first round pick to get Petry over there. They're not going to want to do that, but that's the price. I think the Sharks right now, in terms of their retention amount, most of the talk seems to be that's about 20%. I think that they increased the retention amount to say 30%, not 40%, which is what I've kind of urged just for them to get a stronger return, not
Hmm.
50%, which is the max that they can retain, even though Mike Guerrero said that we're not going to do that. He said that at the beginning of the summer. So
Sure.
I think they increased a little bit to 30%. And at that point, I think the Pens start to offer actual assets in the trade, actual things that the Sharks can use, like decent-ish future assets, which I'm not sure that is out there right now for about 20% retention. So anyway, I do seriously doubt, and fans aren't going to like hearing this, but I do seriously doubt that the Pens are going to part with another first. Remember in this scenario that they've already sent out a first with Petry, so I don't think
Yeah.
they'll trade another first. I don't think that they're going to trade Pickering or Jaeger, their best prospects right now, for that amount of retention. But then we have to figure out what can they offer from that point, a second round pick, whatever, right? That then it
Hmm.
becomes enough for the Sharks to move on from Karlsson and just kind of wash their hands of it. So anyway, overall, I don't think everything gets resolved by this weekend, which I think has sort of been suggested, just because so for Dubas, right, to exercise the buyout on Monday, he has to be reasonably sure that the other moving parts,
Yep.
Petry to a third team, the Sharks accept his offer, are reasonably in place or close, I think. And so if those things, fall in place, I don't think everything gets resolved by this weekend, but it could be pretty soon, though, after that. Because, like I said, if Dubas does buy out Granlund, and then you're thinking that, okay, that means, if Dubas does A, and it means B and C, which I don't know for sure, by the way. I do want to say that. Like, there is reason for Pittsburgh to buy out Granlund, completely independent of Erik Karlsson,
Sure.
which I mentioned. But anyway, all this is a complete guess anyway. So this is just my guess. What's
So your
your
guess is
prediction?
basically Granlund gets bought out, Petry gets traded to like Chicago,
Hmm.
and then the Sharks eventually make a trade with the Penguins, but that might not happen by Monday, basically.
Yeah, that'll be my guess, because I think
Mhm.
that I think it's gonna be disappointing for the Sharks to in this scenario to not get a first for Carlson,
Sure.
and so they'll need to hold out to get a better return. But like you said, I don't think I don't think it would go up to a first or Pickering or Jaeger caliber, at least at
Yeah.
that amount of retention.
I think I think that I think that scenario is probably solid, right? Where they buy out Granlund.
Mhm.
I do wonder why it didn't happen this morning when the window opened.
Sure.
If they knew they were going to do this, why they didn't do it on the first day? Like, is there more thinking to go, or is it not going to happen, kind of
Well,
thing?
like I said, it could be contingent on B and
On other
C,
moving
Petry and
parts.
the Sharks,
Yeah,
right? Like,
yeah,
again, being, like, reasonably close where it's like, "Okay, I
sure.
think this is gonna happen. We just need to, figure out some details," but
Yeah, yeah, and they still do
maybe.
have 2 more days. Maybe they just want to
Yeah,
wait it off. But that would be my only like hold up about the buyout thing. I think it's still possible that he gets traded rather than bought out because he was traded for like a
sure.
second round pick. He had a
Yeah, but
really poor 20 games with Penguins. Like that was it was pretty awful.
Mhm,
And it was considered an overpay. And they were just trying to find a way to make the playoffs kind of
mhm.
thing. But it's not like he's, you know, league wide regardless, like a horrible player. He had a bad
No, it's true.
year.
Well,
So
yeah, but he's at 2 years left. That's part of it though, right? And
he
so
does.
that's
He has 2
why.
years and 5 million, but he also has like
Yeah,
no trade protection. So I
yeah.
think there's still a possibility that he's traded, whether that's to the
Well,
Sharks or anywhere.
my argument with that though is that they got to trade Petry too. They basically to
Mhm.
clear a space for Karlsson, not to get under the cap, so we
Yeah,
don't worry about that. So they may just buy out a Granlund and keep
regardless.
Petry. Who knows, right? But if they
Yeah.
want to fit in on Karlsson, they probably need to get rid of both.
Mhm.
And I think that obviously Pittsburgh will want to get rid of both and not give up multiple first.
Yeah. I
And
just don't
so
think
I think it's trading or buying, it's basically trading one because you need to
Mhm.
attach a first. I think Granlund, you had to attach a first. That's at least I know what he went for during the last trade deadline, but speaking with my sources, like that's where his value is kind of at. That they still needed to throw in a first with a Granlund.
Mhm.
Even though the things you say are true, he's younger and he's
He's like 30.
closer
I
to
mean,
yeah.
he's like been regarded as a good forward for a long
Yes,
time. My
no, for
other
sure.
argument for about that I'm not buying out is
Mhm.
like if the rest of this deal isn't in place with the Sharks, their forward depth is not good either. Like their bottom 3 forwards are Drew O'Connor, Matt Nieto, Alexander Nylander, and Nola Chari and Lars Eller, Jeff Carter, who had a horrible year. Like their forward depth on the bottom isn't good. So
No, it's
they
true. And
could,
Pittsburgh's a very flawed team. Yeah, for sure.
yeah. So they could just say, okay, we're gonna hold on to Granlund, and if we can trade him in a Carlson deal to the Sharks, then we'll do it. But we might not buy him out yet. That would be my prediction to counter your prediction, but I still think yours is probably slightly more likely that they do just buy
Right.
him out
Well,
and find
again,
a
though, if
younger,
they trade
cheaper
Granlund
forward.
to the Sharks, you probably need to give the Sharks a first too. And I guess that's what I mean. Like they're
Mhm.
not going to if they need to trade Petrie and add a first and trade Granlund and add a first. That's 2 first round picks going out. I
Yeah,
don't
that
think
but
that
that's
they
like
would want to do that.
an ideal world. I think, like, I don't know, there is a way I think Greer could spin this where he gets a first because he's
Hmm.
taking on, like, Granlund, and he
Hmm.
still spends it as, "Oh, well, we got assets back," right?
Sure.
Even though they did have to most of that asset is just the money that they got for taking Granlund,
Hmm.
but at least you can spin it to people that you didn't give Carlson away for nothing, because
Oh,
that would
sure,
be the
sure.
way
Yeah.
that I would do it. It's
Yeah, no,
basically try and
I do agree with that. I mean, that's why I
yeah,
mentioned that
but
Granlund is a way more attractive trade candidate. You could trade him to
yeah,
San Jose, and San Jose could have use for Granlund can bounce back, and
sure,
maybe you trade him next trade deadline. Not
but
this coming one, but the next one. But again, though, what do you do with Petrie then? And
yeah.
the
Teacher's still gotta go, which is,
and
is
yeah,
hard to do. Mhm.
it's hard, yeah, and
So,
so yeah, so I guess like I think the buyout kind of makes sense for Pittsburgh just because it's clean and there's a lot of savings on Granlund.
mhm,
It's a attractive-ish buyout. I guess that's why there's more of a
yeah,
fixation with Granlund with his buyout because
yeah,
yeah,
I think your prediction is probably more likely. I just think
yeah,
that there is still a possibility that trade is the option rather than buyout,
sure.
and then, yeah, I think at the end of the day, I don't have a good Carlson prediction other than I think it'll be the Penguins. It's just how much we're actually gonna get
And
is
you still think this summer?
yeah, I still think this summer. I think
Okay.
by training camp timeframe.
Okay. Okay.
It's just, gonna be more waiting. Or it happens
Second
tomorrow and we could scrap this whole thing.
yeah, exactly. A second round pick and Ty Smith. Anybody? 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 Any
Second
takers?
round pick. Yeah, throw it a goalie prospect and we're solid. I think we need a few more of those. All right.
Let's move on from the Karlsson talk and let's talk about the World Junior Summer Showcase. And this is an event hosted by USA Hockey, and it's in Michigan. Features Sweden, Finland, and 2 USA teams, and split squad USA teams. And it's a lead up for the World Junior Championships. It's all players, U20 players, and just the best prospects for these respective countries. And these teams sort of bring, like Sweden will bring, and Finland will bring kind of their top 30 players, right, for this tournament. And USA, of course, 2 teams. So there'll be, top 50 or so of the USA prospects. And so anyway, this is all preparation for roster decisions, World Junior Championships roster decisions for December when that starts. Anyway, Sharks had the most prospects of any AHL team here. They had 7 prospects across these 3 countries. And I want to start, Keegan. I want your opinion on these guys, because you watched as much of the summer showcase as you could. You watched plenty of it, and everything that I've read or heard and seen about Will Smith is that he was one of the most impressive prospects of this tournament.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Will Smith, like game by game, it was pretty apparent that he was probably in the top 3 or so of USA forwards. He was notably off of a line from Leonard and Perreault. So his line mates during his junior year last year, he was only pretty much playing with Leonard and Perreault. They formed the most dynamic junior hockey line in the country, or multiple countries. And he really didn't play with them this tournament, which is good, because it kind of shows that he can, create on his own. And he still did very well. His overall stat line, he had 5 assists in 4 games played. It was kind of consistent too. It was like 1 assist here, 2 assists, 2 assists, that kind of thing. I think he had a point in every game. So it's probably 1, 2, 1, something like that. But it was impressive, and it was written by multiple people, including Stephen Ellis and Chris Peters, that Will Smith looked great. And I agree. He still is kind of not like a 200-foot forward, right? So he's not like the best back checker or anything like that. And his game is very rush focused. He's just really interested in beating players one-on-one, getting around them, trying to find space. And then his playmaking is just ludicrously good. Like he's really good at feeding pucks through, and his vision is fantastic. And it was not just like these assists and that's all he had. He had like 2 or 3 times a game where he's setting up players net front, and then it just didn't slide in, kind of thing. He didn't show off like his shooting skills all that much this game, or these games. It wasn't like he was lining up on the power play as the main shooter. Like USA has lots and lots of options at shooter. But his passing was really what stood out to me the most. The other thing with Will Smith to bring up is that there's kind of like a little bit of competition for the number 1 center job for the World Junior Championship, right? Because it was presumed to be Logan Cooley, right? Because Logan Cooley was going to go back to Minnesota, and then 2 weeks ago or so decided, nope, I'm going to the Coyotes, and he signed his ELC. Now it's kind of expected that he's not going to be at the World Juniors this year, that he's going to be playing in the NHL for the Coyotes the full year, and probably won't come in December to the World Juniors. So that leaves the number 1 center job open between like Will Smith and Cutter Gauthier and Frank Nazar. And notably, Smith and Gauthier are going to be playing together next year for Boston College too. So it's kind of like a miniature debut of who could be the number 1 center for the World Junior Championships for this year. The Gauthier has the advantage of being a year older, a year more developed than Smith, but Smith showed so much at this tournament that it's not just a maybe anymore. It's a possibility that he is the world number 1 center for the World Juniors, which is impressive for an 18-year-old. Right.
And moving on then, so yeah, that's great to hear about Will Smith. The Sharks, obviously, that's the Sharks' highest pick, number 4, and boy, I in like 20 or so years or something, right?
So Marlowe, right? Probably since Marlowe.
Yeah, I think that might be. Well, no, Brad Stewart too was I think number 3. So anyway, in that thereabouts region, but one of his teammates there, Will Smith's teammates, Team USA, Quentin Musty, and a 26th pick for the Sharks in this recent draft, and he was sort of the star of development camp. And
Yep.
so, what did you think of his play in this tournament?
Yeah, Musty. So obviously in the dev camp, Musty kind of actually showed out a little bit more than Smith in that tournament or that game, basically.
Yeah, the scrimmage.
Yeah, but that was kind of like an open, freewheeling kind of scrimmage, and that's kind of what Musty thrives on is rush offense. He's a perimeter player mostly, but his last game specifically was his best game, which is always good in a short tournament like this when you get better instead of getting worse. He at the last game had 1 goal and 1 assist for his 2 points. Those were his only 2 points in the tournament, actually. And notably, he had the game-winning goal for USA with like 10 seconds left. He muscled somebody out in front and then popped in a rebound for a goal to win basically the last game. It wasn't really like a gold medal game, but it had that feel of like because it was a tie game about to go to overtime, and USA beat Sweden with 10 seconds left because of Quentin Musty. I thought he looked good. It wasn't like I think Smith showed more skills, more diversity on his rush patterns and his offense than Musty did. But Musty surprised me a bit because he was more physical in this tournament than I've seen him before, especially in juniors. He would sometimes lag in his physicality, but this one he was like grinding out pucks in the corner. And I liked his play overall. I just think his last game was really the standout game. And the other ones he kind of faded around, mostly played on the power play. Perimeter kind of play, basically.
Hot take from development camp was that Musty might start the season with the Sharks. What do you think?
I don't think so. 2 reasons, I guess. One is that he doesn't have a contract yet for the Sharks.
Sure, that's a good reason.
So he would need to show so much in training camp that you have to earn a contract and then earn a spot in the NHL. It's possible. Anybody can do it, but the second reason is I don't think he's really ready. He doesn't have like a full 200-foot game to play in the NHL. He's really skilled forward, and that's kind of what you start as your base with, and then hope that the rest of everything kind of falls into place. And also, I think he needs to go back and just kill it in the OHL and just
which I mean he didn't necessarily do. I mean he had a good season, but
he did.
There is a reason why he fell a bit in the draft.
Yeah, he wasn't like top 10 caliber season. He just had a pretty decent, like a good season. Just, there's not that 200-foot game to really say that, he wasn't like Nate Danielson where he had an okay season, but you can see the rest of his elements. And he was also a center that he needs to be a top 10 pick kind of thing. I don't think he'll start with the Sharks, but he'll be fun to watch in training camp.
Okay. And another Team USA Sharks prospect who actually really opened eyes, surprised people, I would say, is Erik Karlsson. Karlsson was a 5th round pick in the recent draft, smaller defenseman, overager. What did you see from Erik?
Yeah, Erik Karlsson's interesting because I had watched very little of Karlsson from the USHL, and then he was drafted. I went back and watched him, and I realized that he's a terrific shooter first and foremost. He's got an amazing point shot for on the power play and also at evens. He's got a good wrist shot, good slap shot. And that's kind of what drives his offense is his point shot. Smaller guy, like 5'10" 5'11", right-handed shot. He reminds me of Matthias Havlid, who is another Sharks prospect we're going to talk about in a minute. I don't know if the overall puck skills are there really to say that he's going to be like a first pairing defender, but he definitely did open eyes to basically making this World Junior Championship roster. This was kind of what Karlsson needed to get in there because there's a lot of good USA defenders. He does come in a little bit older, which helps his chances too of making the World Juniors because he's an overager that got picked this year, which would put him in that 2022 draft class originally. Which is what most of the World Juniors is going to be, is that 2022 draft class. So that leads for it. And then also his play at the tournament kind of lends more to him making the team in December. He notably had the point shot that went off, like was a rocket point shot that went off the goaltender and then went to Musty, who then scored it. So it was like basically the game winner was Sharks to Sharks, which was awesome.
Well, it sounds like the Sharks scored like all the goals. It feels like the Sharks scored all the goals in the tournament. But another Team USA prospect, Cam Lund, and Cam Lund, shot up the Sharks prospects rankings last year, but he couldn't find the score sheet in this tournament. What do you see from him?
Yeah, so the first game I watched, I thought Cam Lund looked good. I thought he showed some good rush offense. He made a few passes, which I thought were interesting in the offensive zone. Notably, I didn't see him shooting a whole bunch, which is kind of something that he has been known for in the past, which is he's got a good wrist shot. He's got a good shot. But yeah, he just couldn't get it going. And then USA kind of just jumbled lines, and players would move from USA white to USA blue or back and forth. Those are the two split squad teams. And he just never really found his footing, I think. And he ended up with no points in 4 games. He wasn't that noticeable most of the times when he was on the ice, which is sad. And sometimes that's kind of what I saw in his NCAA tape too, was that he would fade essentially. So he wouldn't always be consistently pushing offense. He would just kind of fade into the background a bit. So still needs more work.
You said in the early game that his passes were interesting. What do you mean by that?
I just had like a specific play in my mind that I thought about, basically, where he got into the zone. He went off just a little bit to the half wall, and then baited the defender, passed over his stick to somebody who was coming in front, and it led to a really good chance. But it's just how he like baited the player to come at him and then pass through him, which I liked a lot. But that was like, I was like, oh, that's Lund, good, and that's good, and then didn't really notice him the rest of the game. So yeah, so it was just really that pass was interesting, and that's most of what I can remember from. There were some other chances that he got, but he just wasn't very dangerous, which is not great, because I think he was a late cut from World Junior. Well, he got invited to the World Juniors for last year, as like into their camp kind of thing, and then got cut. And I worry about his chances based on this tournament only, but he is older, so there's a chance that he makes the team just based on his age.
Right. No, you definitely want to see, year to year growth, right? So another guy who shot up in the Sharks prospects rankings last year, now moving on to Team Sweden, is Philip Bysted. And it sounds like he impressed, even though all of his production in this tournament was in one period of one game.
Yeah. So yeah, Bysted had he played 3 games. So there was a game where Bysted and Havlitz sat out a game. I don't really know why. So instead of the 4, he played 3. He had 3 goals, all of which came in one period, the final game against USA. And his only 3 points. I think he might have had another assist in the first game. I think Sweden won like 7-1. And I remember watching the game and recognizing that he got an assist, but it wasn't.
Oh, you gotta let his agent know then. So yeah, you gotta get him.
Maybe I'll go back and rewatch it and see if he really did get that point. But I think even though all of his points came in that last game, which clearly he dominated in that period, he played well overall. The Bysted is like a calm and basically the type of center that Sweden's going to want in their top 2. Their first or their second line. He's just a good 200-foot player. He's got great puck awareness. He's got great retrieval skills. He was really impressive with his puck protection habits in this tournament too. I felt like, well, he's been playing against men forever, so it's not that surprising, but it's a big improvement from when he was playing in Swedish juniors, like just how well he can protect the puck with his frame, because he's huge. And how strong he's gotten. So I like that progression from Bysted a lot. And obviously, hat trick in one period is pretty cool. And but even if he wasn't that productive otherwise, I thought he had a great tournament.
Hat trick?
I can't remember. I think there might have been a USA goal in there too.
Oh, okay. That's one of my favorite hockey phrases, the natural hat trick. Hat trick is cool, but natural one.
I like natural hat trick because there's like different interpretations of it too. Some people think natural hat trick has to be same team, one period only.
Right.
And then some people think it's
one period. Okay.
Yeah, some people think it has to be just in a row, could be different periods. And then some people think it can be just if your team scores 3, even if somebody else scores in the middle of it, it's fine. There's like all
Yeah.
different interpretations of the natural hat trick. So I don't know where I land on them, but
And funny enough, both of Matthias Havlic's 2 points in the WJSS were to Beestead. So also in the same game and period. So what'd you see from Matthias?
yeah, and same thing that Havlet had shown in the dev camp scrimmage is that he just plays a very solid defensive game for somebody his size. Not a big guy, 5'10", 5'11", but he's physical enough. He can get the puck off players in the boards, and he defends well enough for his size. He's never really out of position. And then his offensive game, he can make a breakout pass, but it's not like he's crazy creative or anything like that. He's also not a not the fastest guy to like rush the puck up either. He's mostly just a shooter, and I think that's kind of going to be his way offensively as a defenseman in the NHL. Hopefully, is with his shooting skills first and foremost. But overall, his play felt kind of similar to Beestead in that it looked like he had played against men for a year, which he has. And he stood out a little bit in just his solidness defensively. But yeah, he didn't put up too many points, just those last 2 points to Beestead.
Right. Well, last but not least, for Finland, we have the recent second round pick, Kasper Halttunen. And what'd you see out of Kasper?
Yeah, to be honest, it was kind
Was
of
he a ghost?
That's a good one. He was a little bit of a ghost. Halttunen had been given a lot of ice time and a lot of power play time, and I think he was on the first line almost every game, or probably every game, as the first line right wing, and got no points in the 4 games. And when I watched him, wasn't doing a whole lot. Like he does have, he competes, and he's not like he's being lazy out there or anything like that. It's just I think the awareness of the play around him is kind of lacking, and he needs to figure out how to pick his shots better too. Because there was multiple times when he would be shooting and he really needed to get it on net, and he's just trying to pick a corner, and he shoots it, goes right past the goaltender to the boards and then out the other end. And that happened like multiple times when you're really can't have the puck leave the zone, and it wouldn't have if he just picked his shots a little bit better. He's also never found a puck he didn't want to shoot, so I think he needs some refinement on how frequently he shoots as well. There's just, and it's not like, it's one small tournament with a bunch of players. It's just, I think because he doesn't have a whole lot of playmaking to his game already, that this can kind of happen where if his shots aren't going in, he's going to put up 0 points. Whereas in the World under 18s, he was on fire offensively. It's just can kind of go through these streaks, but needs more time for sure.
Okay. Finally, to close off, I'm going to put you on the spot here, Keegan. Rank all 7 of these Sharks prospects at the World Junior Summer Showcase. Rank them 7 through 1. Yeah, no, other way around. Let's have some suspense. So yeah, 7 through 1.
I would say Halttunen would be 7.
Okay.
I'd say Lund would be 6.
Okay.
I think Lund just showed a little bit more. I think his was more being down the lineup rather than, I think Halttunen, because he was given the top spot and couldn't really produce it. It didn't impress as much as Lund, who wasn't given a good spot and then still tried, just couldn't get anything going.
Sure.
After that, probably Havlid. Not that he was bad, just that he was solid overall. Then let's go Musty. I think Musty next. I think he had a good last game, but it wasn't like he dominated every game. There was a couple games where he didn't really do a whole lot. The other USA forwards that are super, super good were dominating the score sheet.
Erik Polkamp moving up the charts like a bullet.
Yeah, Erik Polkamp probably would have been the next one, to be honest, just at this tournament, right? Or this showcase. Because he did open a lot of people's eyes. He put up 3 points in 4 games. He was active, engaged, and I think he's got a real shot to make the team. Second would be Beestead, because I think Beestad's going to be Sweden's top 2 centers for the World Juniors, and I just like his 200-foot game. And when the team really needs that kind of player, he's one of the only ones that Sweden's got to do it. So He would be 2, and then Smith would be 1.
Okay.
Because Smith was excellent every game. He needs to work on his 200-foot game, but his playmaking was a standout every game, and he could have put out like maybe double the amount of points that he had because he was really flying out there.
You were saying before we recorded that you thought that Smith was a top 3 USA player. Is that about right for you? Or?
Yeah, I would say so. I liked Frank Nazar's game a lot. He wasn't always consistent, and I don't think he put up as many points as Smith. Cutter Gauthier stood out really well too. Yeah, probably in the top 3, but it's hard because I mostly watched the split squad that had Smith and Lund and Musty, and I didn't really watch the other one that much, so it's hard for me to tell exactly.
Okay. Well, before we get to our Alyn McCauley interview, it's great stuff. You want to check it out. I just wanted to shout out Keegan. You guys probably already know, but he does great prospects work. He does it mostly on his website, half-wallhockey.com. He also has some stuff at San Jose Hockey Now. But right now, though, Keegan is doing a top 20 Sharks prospects list, his own summer showcase, and he's already has the honorable mentions up, and I think just today released prospects 20 through 16, and so yeah, go to half-wallhockey.com and see the rest of Keegan's rankings.
Yep. And it should be pretty much weekly from here on out, so there'll be 3 more articles out, and yeah, thanks guys for reading. Thank you, Sheng, for talking about it. I hope you guys enjoyed the Alyn McCauley interview we're going to get to in just a bit. Got anything else, Sheng?
Nope, that's it.
All right, hope you guys have a good week. Alyn McCauley is one of the great underrated Sharks. After playing 5 seasons for Toronto, he was traded to San Jose in 2003 in a deal that sent Shark star Owen Nolan to Toronto. He was part of 2 playoff runs for San Jose, including in 2004 when the Sharks made the Western Conference Finals for the first time in their history. In 2004, he was also the second Shark and only Shark for now to be a Silk finalist. After retiring in 2007, McCauley has been a professional scout for the LA Kings and Philadelphia Flyers for over a decade, from 2009 to 2022. Last year, he was the director of player personnel for the Flyers, and next year will serve as the Flyers' assistant general manager. He joins us today to talk all about his experiences on the Sharks and the changes occurring with Philadelphia and their rebuild. Welcome to the show, Alyn.
Excellent. Thank you for having me.
Alyn, I wanted to start off here first. You were drafted actually by the Devils in the 4th round in 1995, but you never played there. And you were traded to Toronto for Doug Gilmour in 1997. I had to ask you, I mean, Doug Gilmour, a franchise icon in Toronto, and also obviously Toronto, all the media attention there. Was it ever tough getting traded there for Doug Gilmour?
Yeah, very much so. And I'm from a small town called Gananoque, which is about 20 minutes away from Kingston. And Doug is the, front and center, the pride of Kingston because of all his hockey accomplishments. And so, yeah, it was very exciting to get traded for Doug. Thankfully, there were a couple other players in the trade to kind of, share the burden of the expectations in getting traded for Doug, and Dave Ellett was the other player that went to the Devils, and then myself, Stevie Sullivan, and Jason Smith, who actually coaches for our team in Lehigh, came the other direction. And my first game against New Jersey, my first shift was against Doug.
Really?
Yeah. And Doug won the faceoff and then snuck by me and tipped one home. So it was a heck of a start and probably one of my worst games. But I was very thankful to get drafted. That year that I got drafted to New Jersey was the year that they won the Stanley Cup. And so it was a great team to go to training camps with and be around the Martin Brodeurs and Scotty Stevens and Scott Niedermayers and Bobby Holik and the list goes on. But and to tie it into something recently, I was at the draft in Nashville and waiting for my Starbucks, and then who walks in but Lou Lamoriello. And I have everyone kind of is in awe, and maybe rightfully so, of Lou and I haven't spoken to him really, I don't think, since I was traded. And I just was like, felt the urge to go up, and I introduced myself, and we had a nice little chat, and just told him how thankful I was to kind of go into that environment that they had in New Jersey. And I always felt like it played made a positive impact in my hockey career.
That game, first game against the Devils, was that in Toronto also?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Unfortunately, so yes.
A lot of friends and family.
Yes, always. That was the one nice thing of being in Toronto was, it was only about 2.5 hours away from my hometown. And so, yeah, lots of friends and lots of love and support for my years in Toronto.
Did getting traded for a guy like a Doug Gilmour, I didn't realize that he also was a hometown hero too. So that's another layer to that. But that make it much easier that when you're traded again a few years later for Owen Nolan to the Sharks, another franchise cornerstone there. But of course, the media attention in San Jose is not quite, Toronto.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think what helped that time around, because it wasn't the same kind of trade. There was a pick involved, Brad Boyes, who was a prospect, and then myself. So I was the only player, but there was a lot of transition at that time. And so I came in at the same time as, I'm trying to think, like Wayne Primo. I'm trying to remember the players that were traded at that time, but I know there was an influx of guys from underneath, like Chichi was starting to establish himself as an NHL player, and Jimmy Fahey and Dimitrakos. And anyway, there's a lot of change going on. So I never really felt that much pressure, and the Sharks were trying to reestablish themselves. They had a good year, I think, the year before, and then had a really down year, and that led to Owen being traded. And it was interesting because I went from Toronto, where I was one of the young players, to the Sharks, where I was one of the more veteran players. Within a few days, I had that dynamic change for me. Go in the dressing room, and here are guys looking somewhat up to me because I've got experience in the league, versus Toronto, where I was probably the third youngest guy in the room. So yeah, it was very, very different change that way. But like I said, I think because of all the moving parts that were going on at that time, it made I didn't feel the pressure, and I never thought that I was going to fill the skates of Owen Nolan anyway.
Sure.
So, well, the 2003-04 season was probably your best NHL season, and the Sharks had a great run. They made the conference finals that year, and you were a Selke finalist. About that team, what made the 2003-04 Sharks special? I think you got into it a little bit, but
yeah, no, I mean, we had a great young group of players, for sure. We certainly had some great chemistry, both on and off the ice. We had some terrific veteran players: Vinny Domfus, Scotty Thornton, Mike Ricci, Mike Rathje, Nabby. We had it's crazy to say this, but I mean, or to think back on it, but we had, Nabby and net. Backup was Toskala, and we more or less gave away Kiprasov, who ended our season that year, ironically.
Sharks fans remember.
Yes, I'm sure they don't forget that. I certainly don't. But yeah, it was just a couple things, I guess, stood out about that group. One was kind of the chemistry that we had. There was a good vibe about our group. There was nobody that was, everybody kind of had a team mentality. Like, Patty Marleau was, I don't even know if I'd argue it was our most talented player, but he's a very, humble, modest guy, easy to get along with, great sense of humor. So there was no real rub in the room. And then, like I said, Todd Harvey, Mike Ricci, Rathje, all those veteran guys were terrific people. But I do remember one instance early in the season where we're kind of stumbling a little bit, and it was in Tampa, and again, ironically, Tampa goes on to win the Stanley Cup, but we got spanked and beaten easily by them in their building. And we had a players only meeting the following day. And sometimes the players only meetings get blown out of proportion and how important they are. But that year, we kind of made a promise to each other that, like, we're not going to lose we're not going to lose 2 games, back to back for the rest of the year. I don't know why, but it seemed to hold true. And we kind of, as a group, had that mentality that, like, if we lost a game, we upped our focus and our compete and everything else as a group the next game. And I don't know, that mentality just kind of served us well the rest of the year. We had good, talented young players, with a great supportive veteran cast behind or with. It was a lot of fun to play that year. And then, we had other things both individually and as a team that changed the following years.
Right. You mentioned that story before about the 2003-04 team and that kind of pledge you guys made, and you guys didn't lose, I think, 2 games in a row until I think February or something like that. I looked that up. And anyway, I wonder though, like, what gave you guys that confidence that you could pull off that pledge? I mean, I feel like teams make these kind of promises or pacts early in the season all the time when you're struggling. but was it something that, once you kind of make this promise to each other that you guys just kept winning and that starts to build the confidence? Or was there something that beforehand that you guys just sort of, knew that you guys were maybe better than your record?
Yeah, I can't necessarily put my finger on exactly why it held true or why we were able to kind of, individually or as a group, I guess, hold up our each end of the bargain. But it just seemed like, when we lost the next game, I think we put together a string of a few wins after that. And then when we did lose, it just, I don't know why we were able to kind of harness that focus and compete and bring it and honor that pledge to each other. But it did seem like that it was an honest pledge to one another, and I guess we held each other accountable that way.
And obviously, you're assistant general manager right now. You're very interested in team building. That 2003-04 Sharks team, underdog team, very little was expected from them at the beginning of the season. So, what sort of maybe elements of team building did you kind of pick up from that 2003-04 team that can apply to any team in general?
Yeah, I think certainly surrounding your group with the right kind of veteran presence and players is key. Whether it be currently for me anyway, for the Flyers or the Phantoms, having those right kind of guys that with their experience and right personalities can go a long way. And I think, the 04-05 group that we had, it took some time because there's a few players that we moved on from, and it really changed the room chemistry, and so I think you got to be careful sometimes in downplaying what those guys bring, even though, they're on the back nine, if you will, of their career. They still offer a lot in the room, and when things go awry or it's not going smoothly, as seasons are long and that tends to happen at times, they kind of, they've been through it, so they know how to settle the ship and get it back on course. And so that would certainly be one thing that I would have taken from that 03-04 year. I guess I've probably mentioned it in a few different ways now, but some of those players we moved on from the next season. I think it took some time for us to kind of figure out, okay, when things don't go as planned, who do we lean on? And maybe that was maybe I was one of those guys, but you know, at the time I still thought I was pretty young, even though my career was over shortly after that.
Yeah, Sheng, you're muted.
What was also additionally tough too was that there was a lockout that year. Like the entire 2004-05 season, you know, went up in smoke. And so you guys were coming off a Western Conference final, and you know, that must have, you know, really kind of taken you guys off your kind of momentum that you guys were on too.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm referencing 04-05 when I should be 05-06. But as far as that group and how it changed, you know, like for my line, we had a lot of chemistry, myself and Neil Zekman and Alex Korliak, and Alex didn't come back in 05-06. Right. And it was difficult. I played the entire season injured, not to, you know, cry me a river, but it was a difficult season individually, or physically, or both. And the fact that, you know, our whole line wasn't back, it was just, it didn't seem, for a few reasons, and certainly the 04-05 season being canceled did not help us, you know, carry that momentum forward.
And going back to the 2003-2004 season, what do you think for yourself came together that season for your play specifically?
Well, certainly the two guys I played with helped a great deal. You know, Alex, both those players were smart players. We read off each other quite well. You could see the chemistry. I could feel the chemistry in practice, which carried over to the games. Probably, to be honest with myself, it was between my ears where I kind of, you know, had a mantra that of being better or the best that I could be as I trained through the summer, and then that carried forward, and a few things fell in place and more opportunity, and you know, maybe there's the aspect of not being under the microscope as much in San Jose as I was in Toronto. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast in Toronto, whether you're, you know, someone that plays in the fourth line or someone that plays in the first line. You know, there's a lot of attention that goes around that team, and it's not good or bad or whatever. It's just, it is. So, you know, there might've been some of that played into it, that kind of eased tension within me, that allowed me to kind of play my game. But yeah, I'm sure there are many factors. But I certainly enjoyed the group that I was playing with, and the environment that the Sharks had in the I don't even remember what it was called back then, SAP Center or
Compact Center, maybe.
Yeah.
HP Pavilion.
HP Pavilion.
Yes, you're right.
San Jose Arena, maybe. That was the first
HP
name.
Pavilion. You're 100% right. I'm trying to remember actually the practice facility the other day. I was talking to Wayne Primo, and it eventually came back to me, the Logitech. Whatever, Iceplex or whatever it's called.
Just look at your laptop or look at your mouse, and you can,
the early 2000s tech boom, right?
Yeah, when the practice facility was like 2 arenas, and now it's, I think, 6 or something crazy. Yeah.
Speaking of Korolyuk, he is one of the great lost Sharks. After that 2003-04 season, he went back to Russia. I actually think he might have been traded to the Devils, and there was some talk he might come back, but he never came back. Do you know why? I don't know if you keep in touch with him. Like, do you know why he chose to stay in Russia after that?
Yeah, I just think Alex and his family were, you know, most comfortable back home, and you know, as much as it was difficult from, you know, say a personal standpoint or even a team standpoint to not have him there when he was such an integral part of our success in 03-04, you know, I can respect that it's you know, if I had been playing over in Russia, that, you know, there would have been a real pull to go back home.
Sure.
And I assume that the whole season being canceled in 04-05 gave him the opportunity to, experience life back in Russia and friends and all that. Just kind of get out of the routine of what the NHL and North American hockey was to him. And, he made those connections back there and wasn't willing to come back from that. So it was difficult. I haven't stayed in touch since then. But I do remember having some conversations with him in 05-06 or leading up to 05-06, because I knew that it was a possibility that he wasn't going to return. And like I said, I wanted him to come back, but could certainly respect the decision that he was making.
Of course. And another thing that's striking about that 2003-04 season is, for yourself, right? We talk about what came together for you throughout the season. You kept getting more and more responsibility. I think from January 1st of that season, your ice time was second only to Marleau among team forwards, which that's not how the season started. And this coincided with Vinny Damphousse, who that was actually his last season. He was 36. He had an amazing career, won a Stanley Cup with the Canadiens in '93. And so you talk about sort of that leadership. How did Vinny accept sort of that transition in his career?
Well, that season, anyway, I thought that Vinny was excellent. Any of my experiences with Vinny were terrific, actually. I mean, I found him very down to earth. He did want the puck on his stick for sure, regardless of how old he was. He could still make plays. He was still very effective on the power play. For a guy that was, had the experience and the clout that Vinny brought with him,
right?
There wasn't really an ego to him. I think he was a confident guy for sure. But as far as his interactions with the players, you didn't feel like, hey, there's a 36-year-old in the room, or I can't remember how old he was, in probably his mid-30s when we played together. But no, he's just one of the guys, and I felt like he was handling the transition quite well, and I do think it was tough to lose him the following year.
Yeah, and the other leaders on that team, the Sharks had rotating captains between you, Patrick Marleau, Mike Ricci, and Scott Thornton. So why did you tell Ron Wilson to make Marleau the captain?
I just felt like for Patty's growth as a player, that it was an important step and probably the right time for it. I also felt like it was going to benefit us as a group that way, that give him more responsibility, yet shared responsibility. It wasn't like, okay, I don't. It wasn't like I didn't want the C. I took great pride and honor in wearing the captaincy. I didn't feel like I needed to have it on my jersey. I don't really regret it. I mean, I enjoyed wearing the C on my jersey for the opportunities that I was given. I don't. Was I right or wrong? I don't know. But those were kind of the reasons behind my choices.
Oh, we've talked before about how Patrick Marleau reminds you of Matt Sundin, actually, who he played with in Toronto, consummate pro who has been, blasted by some for not winning a Stanley Cup. And seeing Patty in the playoffs yourself, and I know you think it's unfair. Why do you think that it's unfair for a guy like Patty and Matt's to have to deal with that?
Well, I just always felt like, for Patty anyway, that the numbers suggested he produced at the most important time of the year. The fact that the team doesn't win, and this is where I'd make the comparison to the two guys, is that the fact that the team, didn't get to the promised land or didn't win a cup shouldn't just fall on their shoulders. I understand that because of their stature, and their, for what it's worth, hockey players don't think this way, but their contract status, that they should deliver. But, we all know that it's a team sport, and it doesn't just hinge on, did Patty score enough goals for the Sharks to win, or did Mats, make enough plays for the Leafs to win? I always felt like those guys were over criticized for, the team's inability to succeed. And I didn't think it was justified. I felt like they held up their end of the bargain, and I know sometimes you get down and you lose game 7 and somebody's -3, and you put all the weight of your criticism and based upon one game. Again, am I right or wrong? I don't know, but that's certainly why I would, I hold both of those players in great regard, and I'm sure they'll, both be in the Hall of Fame. One is, and I'm sure Patty deserves to be there at some point.
And anyone who can criticizes Patrick didn't have to face Mika Kiprusoff in the 2004 playoffs. So just how good was Mika? Because you look at those numbers. I mean, those are just, he just was astounding that year, right?
He was. And I didn't spend a lot of time with Mika as a Shark, because he was our third string guy. But what I would say is that there were a few times in practice. So what would happen is Vesa and Nabi would go out and practice, and then after practice, Mika would come on. Kipper would come on and then face shots, and which I'm sure wasn't incredibly enjoyable for him. But what I was going to say is that there'd be times when you do these shooting drills with him through the goalie coach, and he wouldn't let in anything. It's just like he made his mind up, like, you're not going to score. And it was very similar to a goalie that I played with in Toronto, and Curtis Joseph. Oh. And some practices, coach could care less about. I shouldn't say care less, but it was a different level of Cujo.
Sure.
And then there were times in practice where it was like, okay, this is all-star Cujo, and he's going to stop everything. Yeah. And so Kipper had that ability, and that's what you saw in that run that they had was, him at his peak or his best. And I don't know how many goals he scored in that series, but it was incredibly hard to get anything past Mika. And a lot of the games, unfortunately, at home for us in that series, I think we went down 2 goals in in each of the 3 games we had at home, and we lost all. We happened to go into Calgary and win 2 and even up the series, but it was a tall task to come back after going down 0-2 to them.
And moving forward to the next season, what do you remember about the night that the Sharks traded for Joe Thornton?
Well, it was a real tough stretch for us, and I don't know why we couldn't win. I remember a game in that stretch where we lost to Detroit at home, and I don't know how many leads we had in the game that we ended up losing. I think it was 7-6. Shanahan scored in overtime to extend our losing streak or winless streak slump. And we played, where were we? We were in Dallas. We were getting ready for the game. I think we'd taken warm up. It was in that range anyway. Yeah. The guys were getting ready. And then all of a sudden, a few players get pulled out.
Right.
So I think it would have been Sturm.
Primo
and Brad Stewart. So we lost like 3 players that were going to be in that game that are now out of the game. And we were pulling guys out of the press box to probably with half a hot dog.
Yeah, Fahey and Dimitrakos. Yeah, they've talked about having like pot roast or something, or prime rib. I think.
Yeah, I think it might have been hot dogs.
And hot dogs too, actually.
I don't think they were quite prepared for the game, but anyway. So yeah, it was certainly big news and a big deal. I'd played with Joe at World Juniors, but that was many years prior to that. He was a well-established all-star in the league, so it was big news, a big change for us. And And the other thing I'll say is that when we brought Joe in, we played Dallas that night. I scored, and can't tell you what game that was of the season, but myself and Jonathan Chichu had 7 goals at that point. Jonathan went on to win the Rocket Richard, and I ended up with 12 goals on the year. So we
let me do the math here. I think Jonathan scored 49 more goals that year, and you scored.
Yeah,
I won't say it. I won't say it, Alan.
Yeah, it was. But anyway, it was great. I mean, it was fun to watch. I love Cheech, and we get along fabulously on and off the ice, and was very happy for him that he had that success. But to draw the comparison to us, he took off like a rocket ship, and I went in the other direction, or I flatlined.
And have you ever seen a player quite on fire like Jumbo was in 2005 or 6, or even Chichu yet?
Yeah, no, it was remarkable. I mean, it just felt like if Cheech got 1 goal, he's probably going to get 3. Like there were so many nights where he just got and then it was chance after chance after chance, and Jumbo, incredible playmaker, and see the ice and hold guys off and create chances himself. It was just an elite offensive talent for such a long time, and that year, a setup man. It was kind of like Oates and Hull, or whatever you want, whoever you want to pick out of as far as a setup man and a trigger man. Backstrom and Ovi, and they were just on a different level that year.
And you had defended against both Marleau and Thornton in practice and on other teams as well. Who was tougher for you to handle defensively?
Good question. If I would say this, if it was on the rush, Patty, the efficiency that he skated with was, Niedermeyer, pick out some of the best skaters in the world. He had that incredible glide to him, and he didn't necessarily look like he was going as fast as he was all the time. And then Jumbo was down low. If he got the puck below the tops of the hash marks, he had an innate ability to just, while his size was a great attribute and strength of his, to hold guys off and see the entire ice. Great patience, and he just seemed to be able to find whatever hole there was to lay a pass into an area, and all the great players, I think, have that sixth sense or the elite sense to them, and that's why they stand out, and that's why they're able to create and some of the young players today that are being drafted high, that's usually what separates them is their sense for the game. And I only played a little while against Gretzky, but he had it. That's what separated him from just about everybody else in the game.
I got to ask you one question about Jumbo as a teenager. I've learned that Jumbo as a teenager, he was a great shoe checker. And for those of you who don't know, shoe checking is a ritual that goes on when a hockey team is gathered around a team table. Some guy will sneak under the table and put ketchup all over everybody else's shoes without getting caught. And so I wonder if Jumbo pulled that off on you guys when you guys were playing together at the World Juniors.
Yeah, not to my knowledge. I wasn't somebody that was involved a great deal on either side of that prank, and it would surprise me a little bit because Joe is so big. And usually, as far as the shoe checking goes, what I would typically remember are the guys that were the targets. I always felt like there were repeat victims. Right or wrong, or for different reasons for the guys that I'm thinking of anyway. Some guys got chosen a little more often than others.
Maybe based on their reaction to it.
Yes. You always need to be careful on how you react, because if somebody senses that they're getting under your skin or they're
Right.
getting one up on you, then yeah, you're probably getting it done a second or third time as well.
No, you seem like the cool and collected type. So
Yeah, no, I have some Irish blood in me, so it can get a little fiery at times, but I try to keep it together as best I can.
So after the 2005-06 season, you signed with the LA Kings for 3 years, but you only played 10 games in LA because of knee injuries, and those 10 games would be the last kind of games of your NHL career, unfortunately. When did the knee trouble start for you?
They actually started just prior to the 05-06 training camp. I started because we were kind of up in the air whether we're actually going to have a season in 05-06, and then things came quickly as far as the CBA went with the league and or between the league and the players. And then I started training, and about, I don't know, maybe the second week of August or so, I was doing some work at the track, and I noticed a little bit of swelling in my left knee, and I thought, okay, that's weird. That's never happened before. And then it subsided. So I thought, okay, I'm good to go. And then I started to, my training up again, and it started again. And it still happens to this day. I've had 5 knee surgeries, and for whatever reason, the way my body reacts with this worn down cartilage is it swells up. And anyway, it was quite unfortunate. I thought I was going to have probably another 5, 6, 7 years in the league, and was hopeful that it would be in San Jose, and then that wasn't a possibility, and so I signed in LA, and unfortunately for them, I guess, as well as me, it only lasted 10 games, but that's just the way it goes. That's what life had scripted up for me, and I dealt with it. But it was it was a real challenging year. Then 05-06, I had a lot of swelling in my knee and a lot of discomfort, and there wasn't a whole lot I could do about it in season, and it was the beginning of the end.
Well, so there's a good reason why Jonathan Cheechoo scored 49 more goals than you then.
Well, yeah, I'm sure it had more to do with than just my knee, but yeah, no, it was a challenging year on a number of levels, and I always wish that my Sharks time had been longer. Fans were terrific. I love the area. Took my son back this spring, actually.
He was born in San Jose, right?
Correct, yeah. And so that was part of the reason that we went back to San Jose, or I took him to San Jose. Took in a few Sharks games, went to Barracuda a couple of times, and it was we still have friends there that we made during our time, and anyway, it's water under the bridge now, but I certainly was hopeful at the time that I was going to have another 5, 6, 7 years in San Jose, and it just wasn't meant to be.
Speaking of some of those friends, who are still some of your good friends from those Sharks teams?
I just meant people from the area, in the neighborhood.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Michelle and Chris Peacock were, season ticket holders.
Sure.
We got to sit with them last year when we went to who did they play? Seattle was the one game, because that's my son's favorite team. Don't ask me why. And
it's the logo.
It's the teal.
Well, he's just never been a fan of any of the teams. He's just always kind of supported who I was connected with, and then when they came in, he decided to go there. Anyway, Columbus was the other game. I think they both went into overtime. They were actually entertaining, exciting games. And
it was end of the season. That was like in March.
Correct.
Right? Yeah, sure.
End of March or early April, whenever it was, so it's San Jose is always going to kind of be a little bit of a home away from home, and my wife would have gladly retired there.
Just for yourself, was it sort of tough to sort of at any point, come to grips with just, how great your career could have been. I mean, again, you were a Selke finalist in 2004. I think you were like 25, 26. You could have well been, for the next decade, in that conversation. And so was that tough tough for you to deal with, as your career was winding down there?
Yes, to be honest, yes. It felt like, I kind of worked along, established myself, got traded to San Jose, and then my career kind of took off, and then,
right.
Went off a cliff shortly thereafter. And there's nothing anybody could do or to change it. It just the way my body was, and the fate that I was set to have. But was it easy to accept? No player really wants to accept the end of their career or that their game is falling off or I guess in some respects it made it easier because it was somewhat out of my hands. I couldn't play anymore. I just physically couldn't do it. I really haven't put the skates on very often as far as playing games since I retired. I helped coach, and but that wasn't much stress on my knee really. Just kind of walking around or slowly skating around the ice and barking drills at kids. There's only been a few times where I've gotten involved in a charity game here and there, and usually I pay the price for a few weeks. So it's at the time it was a real challenge because you don't, like I said, you don't want to accept it, but there was nothing that was going to change that.
Well, Alyn, thank you so much for your time. We've got just a few more questions for you here. Sure. Your time okay?
Yeah. No,
Awesome. Well, wanted to ask actually about Dean Lombardi's impact on your career. Can't help but notice that he traded for you in 2003. He signed you to the Kings in 2006, and then he hired you for your first NHL scouting job with the Kings in 2009. And also, too, he was in the Flyers front office as a consultant when you joined the Flyers in 2017. And so, can you talk about that?
Certainly. I know Dean loves or likes nothing better than guys, blowing smoke up his, what, and he's, I've got a lot of admiration and respect for Dean and a great deal of appreciation too for, what he's done for me, given to me over the course of my career. Oddly enough, when he traded for me, he was only there probably another 48 hours
right.
to let go. But at the same time, he was, the main cog in that wheel to make that happen. That I ended up as a San Jose Shark. I've learned a lot on this side of the equation because of Dean. He's opened doors. He's educated me in a number of ways. He's always a very thorough and thoughtful and analytical thinker, and has always pushed me to strive for more, whether it be my playing days or beyond. And I've very, very thankful for my connection to Dean and what it's meant. I mean, 2 Stanley Cups and many opportunities. I'm still involved in the game. He's a great sounding board. He's still educating me on a variety of things, which I'm always happy to listen to Dean and hear his thoughts on the game and where we're missing out. He's been involved in the game for a very, very long time and in a few different roles. And I always appreciate whatever he wants to offer me. I'm all ears, and as I said before, I'm incredibly grateful and indebted to Dean for everything that he's done for me in the game.
Wondering, you mentioned the Cups and the Kings won in 2012, 2014. You were a scout then. Did you get days with the Cup?
I did. I actually was just having a conversation this morning. I saw one of the Vegas scouts in the breakfast area, and I know he's got his day planned. And you know, on this side of the equation, it's there's a lot of solo travel. There's a lot of time taken away from your family, and a lot of people, you know, do it and don't have the opportunity to kind of, I wouldn't say repay, but have that opportunity to share it with their family, like having the cup offers. Yeah, it was, you know, two of the probably most special days I've had involved in the game was when I had the cup in my hometown and was able to share it with kids around the area, the fire department, the police department, the old school that I went to, an elementary school that I went to, and both times, you know, was very lucky to have those experiences and have my kids around, especially the second time, even though it was 2 years later. I mean, my son was a little bit older and a little bit more understanding of what the cup meant, and yeah, very, very special days, and very thankful that the team made that happen, because, as I say, the family sacrifices a great deal on this side of the equation, and to kind of incorporate you know, those sacrifices with a day with a cup or a half day with the cup was something that everyone strives for, and I was lucky enough to achieve or experience.
And you're now the AGM of the Flyers. This is after over a decade as a pro scout for the Kings and the Flyers. How did all that time as a scout prepare you for the role that you're about to undertake?
Well, I've certainly been lucky to be around some bright minds, and people that have allowed me to, you know, partake in different aspects of the organizations that I've been party to. You know, Dean Lombardi, Ron Hextall, Chuck Fletcher, were always, you know, kind of open door policy, or at least the door was somewhat ajar, and so yeah, I got to, you know, have interaction with the coaches or development staff, and just luckily enough, I mean, I got to be part of two cup winning teams, so to see how things were done there that led to you know, that end goal that everybody's striving for, is certainly something that's invaluable, and you know, but all that said, I've got lots to learn. You know, I'm gonna do as I've always done. You know, put my best forward and work as hard as I can, and you know, try and be accepting of other people's views and opinions and evaluations on players and what we should do. And I don't have all the answers. I never have. But to this point, my approach and work ethic has served me well, and hopefully that'll be the case moving forward.
And what are the responsibilities you foresee as the Flyers AGM?
So some that I'll carry forward from director of player personnel would be, I'll still be involved somewhat on the amateur side, but more so being organizing the pro scouting staff, as well as being around the Flyers on a regular basis, have interactions with the coaches, and then the new duty or responsibility will be to run the Lehigh Valley Phantoms alongside Brent Flair, and mentor off of Brent. Brent's been in that role for many years with Minnesota, and then most recently with Lehigh and the Flyers. And so I will take on, you know, more of that responsibility as the season goes along, and look forward to whatever those interactions and those situations and dealings that I have with the Phantoms should help me grow as you know, as a upper management seat that I'm now in.
Last year, the Lehigh, they made a bit of a fashion statement with all whiteout jerseys. As sort of running the Phantoms, do you have the ability to nix those jerseys?
No, I think that they're going to stay, and they are something that are thought fondly of by our fan base. But there won't be the all white suits and orange ties up in the press box by the staff. I can tell you that.
No white skates either, right?
No white shoes either.
Wanted to ask you too. You've been through. I mean, it's noteworthy that you've actually been through 3 different Flyer regimes. Ron Hextall, Cliff Fletcher. I'm not Cliff Fletcher. Chuck Fletcher. Yeah, Cliff was his dad. And now
Cliff's the one that traded for me in Toronto.
Oh, well, there you go.
Small hockey world.
And now Keith Jones and Daniel Briere. Just you mentioned your work ethic, your approach. Is that kind of what got you through all this change?
Yeah, I can't say exactly what has led to me sticking around through some of those changes. Probably some luck being involved. Yeah, I try to be, I don't know, inclusive and accepting and easy to get along with, and as well as putting in time and working hard. I don't think there's any secret to success on this side of the equation. In the you're constantly evaluating, you're constantly watching players and seeing trends in the game, and the only way to do that, not the only way, I shouldn't say that, there are ways now to watch games via video. The stuff technology wise has come a long way, but at the same time, to get a real feel for the game, I do think that you need to sit in the stands and watch it. More so than, or more times than not, than watching it on video. So yeah, I've tried to do some of those things and just be myself. And so far I've avoided some of the bullets that have been flying come some of those transitions.
And through a couple of those regimes, the Flyers weren't necessarily rebuilding; they were kind of like retooling. What led to the decision to finally tear it down a bit or change things?
I just think the acceptance of where we're at and where we need to get to, that we need to probably take a step back or maybe 2 steps back to try and take a few steps forward. It's maybe that sounds a little cliche, but and I'm not always wanting to use cliches, but certainly
right?
Yeah, well, you look at some of the teams that have been successful, and where do just take recent winners, forget Vegas for a little bit because they're expansion team, and you look at a lot of these teams and the Ovechkins or the Crosbys, or go back a little further, and Datsuk and Zetterberg, like some of these teams that were built, you had to kind of lose. And sorry, I didn't mean Detroit, I meant more Chicago, and Taves and Kane, that they're real pieces, the core pieces that were built around, kind of came through some difficult times. And if you want to have those real difference makers in your lineup, more times than not, that's where those players come from. And you can get lucky with some guys that come along later in the draft. But typically the first 3 picks are where that you find those players. I guess Makar would probably be an exception. You can find exceptions to any general rule, but and not to say that we're looking to bottom out like some of those teams may have, but at the same time, let's be realistic where we're at. Yeah.
Just a couple more for you, Alan. We'll let you go. Again, thank you so much for the time. One of the striking things about the Flyers rebuild is sort of the transparency of it. And I wonder sort of if what sort of is the thinking behind that transparency. Philly fans aren't necessarily known for their patience, but they're also, thought to be very knowledgeable. And so, when we talk about a Flyers rebuild, actually, it makes me think of, the 76ers. They recently rebuilt and they had a whole mantra, trust the process. And it seems like the 76ers fans, they indeed kind of, they understood that was something that the team needed to go through to get to where they are now. And so was that, just sort of was the thinking behind the transparency? Was it sort of a trust in the fan base that they would get what you guys are doing?
Yeah, I to be honest, I can't speak to it like that. I'm privy to knowing exactly why that is. My take on it would be is that I think the more that you're included or the more that you're kept up to speed, the more willing you are to, be accepting of where the team's at and like,
Sure.
Okay, this makes sense. And, I can see where the end goal is. And maybe the end goal changes a little bit. Maybe it's not always in the same spot. I shouldn't say the end goal, but the path forward. It might change a little bit as you go along. I would assume Chicago, now that they have Bedard, changes a little bit. So, stuff like that happens. But at the same time, to answer your question, I just think that if you're communicating, it's easier to be aware of what's going on and understand, okay, we're here and we want to get to, we're at the starting point B and we want to get to A, and they said that we're going to be here and we're here, and then they said that we're going to be, halfway along here and now we're here. So I just think that, being transparent takes some of the guesswork out and maybe some of the hostility or anger about where we're at times. But we'll see how that goes. And yes, the Flyer fans are demanding, and that's good. I mean, having expectations and to be successful is fine by me. That's where we want to get to.
And the Flyers, speaking of the draft and everything, were the story of the draft, picking Matvei Michkov 7th overall. What do you think the hockey world is getting wrong about Michkov? That question.
I don't know if I'd say that people are getting it wrong. I can understand the reluctance or hesitation that, the player that you haven't seen live, or very few people have seen live for a number of years. Like when it comes to the draft, you are projecting, and it is a bit of, educated guesswork. And so it made it even more, I don't know, volatile or harder to predict or project where's that player going to get to when you haven't really laid your own eyes on him in quite some time. 3 years ago or 2 years ago, he looked like he was going to be, maybe a player that challenged Bedard, and so anyway, I just wouldn't think that he or that the hockey world is getting it wrong as much as they're just
calculated risk.
They're going with a known commodity versus one that's more up in the air.
Mm-hmm. My last question for you, Alan. Actually, I heard stories of Arizona sneaking scouts into Belarus to watch players, to watch draft eligible players, and you mentioned teams not getting their eyes. A lot of teams not being able to watch Michkov. Were you guys able to watch him last year? Did you guys have a scout there, or just how did that come about for you guys? That part of it.
Yeah, we did actually. We have a scout that's based in Russia, and so he was able to see the player, talk to the player, communicate with coaches and people around the league, and so there was there was some contact and some ability to assess the player, but at the same time, that's one opinion. One live opinion. I certainly watched video on them and did some homework, but not the same as I alluded to earlier. That your best opinion, for me, I think is going to come from watching the player live, and so we did have someone that was there, but it was one individual. It wasn't a group of guys, and I can't speak to what other teams were able to do or not able to do.
Right. Just wondering if you had to sneak anybody in. So
no, he was already in there. I think we had to sneak him out. No, he's fine. He was able to make it into the draft and communicate with the players. We had a couple interviews with Matvey and a few other Russian draft eligible players as well.
Okay, well, Alyn, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate this. Good luck with everything. Good luck your first year as Flyers AGM, and I'll see you down the road.
Excellent. Yeah, look forward to it.
Very nice to meet you, Alyn.
Likewise, Keegan.